the more practices would behave as marketing companies that happen to deliver healthcare, the more successful they would be, because at the end of the day, your customer is a consumer. Kick it.
Welcome to Strata Stories. My name is Thomas Schreiber. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Strata PT. Strata PT is a single EMR platform and revenue cycle management service for physical, occupational, and speech therapy practices that helps you achieve a 99.99% reimbursement rate. On today's episode, Paul Singh, the CEO of Strata PT, talks with Colin Rigney, a PT and the business partner at Modern Physical Therapy and Sports Medicine in Phoenix, Arizona. Paul and Colin talk through why you shouldn't build your clinic solely around Medicare, knowing your practice's strengths and how to market them, the importance of standardization and systems within your clinic, how to connect with patients at an emotional level, and learning to diversify revenue streams. If you'd like to learn more about Strata PT and see how our EMR and RCM works, head over to stratapt.com to book a demo. Now, without further delay, here's today's episode.
Thomas had shared some of your notes from the pre-interview, and there was a phrase there. I just want to kind of kick it off with a phrase that sort of caught my attention here. You said you can't create a business model around something that's decreasing every year. And this was in the context of Medicare. I thought it'd be kind of cool to just start right there maybe and just kind of have you elaborate on that topic, and let's see where this goes.
I feel the exact same way. There's such a spectrum of conversations on one end or the other with respect to physical therapy. And I got out of school, and it took me a few years to take responsibility for the choices I made to go into the field I did. My dad was a physician. He owned his own practice many years. I grew up in the field. He started out in residency as an ortho, ended up going into family practice, but he after he's in family practice, owned his own practice for a while. All the orthos love to have him like as their first assist in surgeries, and so I would just tag along. So starting around age 10 or 11, I'm 43. I've been in healthcare for 33 years. I tell people I got out of school and I realized that I hadn't taken accountability for my choices, and I needed to go on this journey to rectify my knowledge gaps. And I just said, there's got to be something more than this. Seeing people for time codes on the half-hour basis, there's got to be something more. There's got to be something better. My first job was with a visionary person who is also a physical therapist. I helped him. I was very loyal in his practice, helped him grow the practice with 3 different locations. And he had a vision for a way that PT should be functioning. And this was around the time that chiropractors were doing the integrated thing with medical doctors. And we said, how about we try something with physical therapy? And this is nothing against chiropractors. I know a lot of good ones. However, there's not a lot of consistency with the way that they treat across, box by box. Whereas physical therapy, there's a lot of consistency. So with respect to building a model around Medicare, it doesn't make sense. Even back then, we were starting to see what was coming down the line. And I think, I see this very clearly from just some of it's political, some of it is just straight numbers. Like, these are unfunded liabilities, Medicare and Social Security. These are set to be insolvent in less than 10 years. So how do we find a way to bring this to the ground level and help people understand that care can be delivered in a third-party payer model much more efficiently than it is? And so we took this concept of bringing in-house non-surgical sports medicine physicians, physical therapists, doing in-house imaging. So my background, I'm a specialist in MSK ultrasound. I tell people it's like a stethoscope for your MSK system. So within a matter of seconds and minutes, we put this probe on. There's this gel. I can tell you exactly what's going on under your skin. We can have people move. It's conversational. It's dynamic. It's an extension of my exam. And so I'm talking to patients. This is what we call it a trust accelerator. And it's a way to, number one, we're cutting down on sending people out for MRIs and that sort of thing. And when we're looking at, patients sitting in specialist offices, how many of them are really candidates to be in that specialist office, like a surgeon? Probably 10 to 15% are actual surgical candidates. And so, we as therapists and non-surgical physicians, sports physicians, we really are best at managing those patients. And that's our message to the community, at least here in Phoenix. We have 6 different locations we operate out of. And that's kind of what we do. We bring that care model to the field, and Medicare loves it. Payers love it because ultrasounds don't. There's like zero authorization. They're cheap. The only issue with that is the training this require. There's knowledge and systems you have to implement, and so we do that on a very practical scale. The therapists are functioning as the gatekeepers. They are working up the patients and really dictating what the medical schedule is. So we run our medical schedules on a lean basis. So they come in at each location, maybe once or twice a week at each location, and they work these patients up. And so we diversify so the insurance is great because it gets us to the evaluation. The physical therapy pays the bills because our contract's a little bit better. We're not taxonomied as a straightforward PT practice. We're a medical practice, right? But we market as PT, but we're really a medical practice. And so elevating the standard of care. But we do a lot of cash services, right? And so I tell people, it's like, you got this expensive house. Let's cohabitate this house and share the mortgage. We do that with these disciplines. So like the medical, we have cash-based services. We do DME, physical therapy. And it's very nice because what we've been able to do is take a little burden off the therapist for having to see volume. Our physicians, our physician assistants like it because it's not the type of schedule where they're coming in and seeing patients every 10 to 15 minutes. A lot of these procedures are 30, 45-minute procedures, these cash paying procedures. And they all like what they do because we're truly delivering best care. And the patients love it because they're not getting sent all over the place for additional co-pays for imaging, going to specialists, and getting fitted for DME in an outside place. So that's been our answer to the declining reimbursements and restrictions from government payers.
And just, to be clear for anybody listening, like you and I don't have a business relationship here. So it's not like I'm touting your business and you're not touting ours or anything like that. But that being said, like, this seems so obvious, and I'm not fishing here because look, I really think that more practices need to diversify, but you're talking about this so casually, matter of factly. In your opinion, why don't most other practice owners do this? I mean, it sort of seems like everybody just wants to either gripe about the decreasing costs and just point their finger at the boogeyman and then just complain.
Yeah.
But you guys kind of have this normal viewpoint on this. You're like, well, this is the state of the industry. We got to figure it out. Why don't other practice owners kind of embrace this, do you think?
We tried this a couple different times and failed. Lost a lot of money in the process. And on the third try, we got it right. Like, we really got it right. We were running something that was completely novel, at least to us. I haven't really heard of anybody doing this at scale, doing it more than off onesies and twosies. I think there's a couple different reasons. And again, I consider myself a content expert, but I'm certainly not an authority to say, like, here's why. But I have some observations. I think one of them is the lack of training and systems. So what I mean by that is doing the ultrasound at the point of care level in a way that exuberates competence takes time. Every new therapist we bring on, like, we have a system. They come in, they work the system, they work their skills, and it takes about 6 to 12 months. So there's an investment we make, and we have to pick the right person to do it. And sometimes it's not always a good match, but we now have our formula, and we're cranking out 1 or 2 a year, basically. And so all we need is like 1 per site. And I think a lot of it's philosophy too, Paul. It makes so much sense when you break it down that way. Like, yeah, let's cohabitate, let's do this, right? But I think for the industry at large, the bottleneck is really the training.
Out of curiosity, when you're recruiting or when you guys are recruiting a new clinician, how do they perceive this? I mean, I know you kind of mentioned it briefly before, it's not about volume. When you go with this model, you don't have to overload the clinician and stuff like that. I'm just curious on the flip side of that, when you're recruiting a clinician, how does that conversation go?
Usually really good. Almost everybody loves it because I mean we do have to meet them. We do have minimums to meet. Okay, I want to be clear there, but like a busy day for one of our PTs is like 14 or 15 patients, as opposed to, I mean, some are seeing 18 to 25 a day. So that's who most of who are interviewing, that's where they're coming from. And so once we break down the model to them, and this takes 2 or 3 interviews, maybe a working interview and some shadowing and stuff, it goes really, really well. Most people get it. 2 types of therapists we're looking for. One is somebody who is going to come in and not necessarily learn the ultrasound piece, but buy into, I have a patient I'm screening out. This patient needs imaging. Here's why. And I'm going to refer you on this day so you can get your imaging done and possibly get a consult with our medical provider. Okay. And then the second person we're interviewing is somebody who's usually either has some ownership experience or is a high performing like clinician and wants to expand their skill set with ultrasound. We make clear the expectations of the time commitment and the extra learning. We're going to invest in them. These are $30,000 programs. We do work agreements and those sorts of things. Like if they're going to come, we're going to invest into them. Okay, we need to come to that understanding, right? So there's a time investment required on our end. So you need to meet us with, unless you want to buy out, that sort of thing, right? It's an easy conversation most of the time because most people get it. And then the other dynamic is the medical side. So we do a lot of orthobiologics. PRP is our probably the main intervention we do at most of our locations. So platelet-rich plasma. A lot of the times there's a ton of evidence for it, and we use it as a means to help people avoid surgery. We don't tell people it's a cure for this, it's got a cure for that, it's whatever. This is whenever you think like steroid injection or gel injections for the knees, we think platelet-rich plasma. And not only is there plenty of evidence to back it up, but it's a cash pay thing. Finding a medical provider who is ideologically on board with that, that's actually a little more challenging than you think. Many who are looking to escape the rat race of seeing 35, 40 patients a day, and they come in and say, oh, you mean I can come in and see 15 patients in my 8 hours? Like, that's great. Let me shadow. And so we have a system where people can come in and check that out as we're taking them through the interview process.
That what you're talking about right there is sort of on a personal note, what I find to be maybe the most interesting part of this. And I'm saying this carefully because I've never been a clinician before, right? So I don't want to piss off the wrong people here. But you know, when you're recruiting somebody in that role, I think there's the hard skills you need to kind of recruit for. So you kind of alluded to might do a working session, you might check their credentials and all that. But the part that now I think you're kind of alluding to that I think is actually the really interesting part of this is there's a certain amount of the soft skills that you're trying to recruit for, and you got to suss that out. My understanding is you guys scaled pretty quickly. I mean, you had mentioned earlier that you tried it a couple times, it didn't work out, and then all of a sudden, you found the right formula and you started going. But in order to then scale, I mean, I think people talk about scaling as if it's so easy, like, oh man, I got product market fit or whatever, and I scaled. The truth is, you got to figure out your processes. And then on this particular topic about people, you've got to also have some sort of recruiting plan in place and kind of suss out the soft skills and that sort of thing. If I was to go to your all's office, is there like a binder somewhere with standard operating procedures, or like, how'd you guys figure that out? Like, and obviously people are going to look at you guys and say, oh, well, they're already ahead of the game, or they're already this many practices or this many locations or whatever. But it sounds like you tested a bunch of stuff. You know what doesn't work. You figured out something did work. What does it look like now? Like, is there a binder somewhere of standard operating procedures? You've developed some sort of system to scale, and how you guys probably were when you were like one location and you could feed the whole business maybe with 1 or 2 pizzas is probably different than how you guys look now, right? And so it's that transition. And I'm just curious, like anything you can share there on what sort of processes and systems you guys have today, or that you needed along the way to get to where you are now?
So it's myself, and I'm not one of the leading partners, by the way. I'm actually a minority partner, but I'm heavy on the operations side. I used to be. Now I'm more systems development education. We started off with the first location in 2019, opened the second one just before COVID in 2020, and we barely survived that with, not having hardly any patients. And then we went from 2 to 4 locations like in a matter of 6 months. And it was at that time we realized that all of us were getting heartburn because we hadn't developed any kind of playbook. And so it was around that time, it was about 2 years ago, we said, guys, if the plan is going to be to look at acquiring practices that are existing healthy physical therapy offices, and we're going to add these disciplines to it, the medical taxonomy, we need to have a playbook. And so everything down from front office to the physical therapist to the medical side, there's three different departments there. Of when somebody comes in and they onboard with us, we run the drill with them, and we have a lead in each department who does that. For the therapist, for instance, like I said, if it's like a staff PT, their playbook is super simple. I mean, they're seeing patients like they would at any other location. However, now with your extra toolkit in the office, you can now learn to identify patients who are, number one, who need more than physical therapy to get better, need imaging, who might possibly need an intervention, right? And so you're going to refer. So the playbook is really for the lead physical therapist doing the imaging. Okay, so therapist comes in. Okay, you have a partial tear that doesn't need surgery of the rotator cuff. What do I do? Right? What's the drill? What's the algorithm? Very rarely do we need to get an MRI on that. So you do the ultrasound, find that. Okay, I'm going to refer to the medical practitioner. Medical practitioner says, okay, based on the literature, based on what we've developed, you're a candidate for platelet-rich plasma. Do you understand what that is? Here's why it's your best treatment option that doesn't involve surgery. Let me explain it to you. And we practice the soft skills all the time because you're selling an outcome. You're not Patients aren't coming to you because you're touting your skill set. Patients are coming to you because they have a problem you need to help them solve. You're tying their experience with you to the outcome they desire. And we have basically it's a loose script that every patient or every clinician, when they encounter a therapist or a doctor in our office, they all run the drill with, what's the desired outcome? How can I help you get there? Here's our toolkit to do that. Based on our findings, this is our best option to get you to your desired outcome. And that's the long and short of it. I mean, there's a lot more details in there, but to answer your question, there is a playbook for every position we have.
One of the maybe controversial things I believe is that, and again, caveat, I've never been a clinician, obviously, but it's interesting when you look at most practice owners. At least the story I hear from them is that they started the business because they wanted to provide better care, and they genuinely care. At least that's what they say, and I have no reason to doubt that. But what they accidentally do is kind of build themselves into a new job because they're still seeing patients and stuff like that. And so, like, if I was to perform due diligence on their business, well, what I would probably find is like a half-assed kind of back-end system of like QuickBooks and this and that and whatever. But you're kind of talking about playbooks and you guys, so I'm kind of curious, like, how did you guys get to that level? Was that ingrained in you? Like, is that when you were telling your story about how you used to see your dad's practice and stuff like that? Did he have playbooks? Like, how did you get to this point? What are you reading? What was your training?
My dad was a mentor in that he ran so he just had one practice that he was able to scale himself, to a certain cap, with nurse practitioners and mid levels, to take a lot of time from him and allow him to breathe and focus on the business, not work in it all the time. So that was my first like little snippet, like, oh, he could take vacations. Like, he loved to work, by the way. And so, but Yeah, that's why he went with my mom to New Zealand for a month. He was able to do things like that because of many systems he was able to apply. We didn't learn this until we got into 2 or 3 locations. You familiar with Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrants? Okay, so let's just call it that. Okay, so small business, right? Your S quadrant type of business. That's not what we're going for, where you're the CEO and the janitor type thing. In order to create something that can run with or without you, you have to establish processes. And that was an evolution for us that didn't happen overnight. I wouldn't say it was ingrained. It was a lot of painful effort and getting a lot of the wrong hires. Um, and then I would say, it was about a year and a half ago that things really started to click for us in terms of we know what works, we know our numbers, we've established processes. If we're not running drill, if we're not seeing monthly, like recurring revenue outcomes the way that we're accustomed to, we have a way to reverse engineer the why behind that happens. So we're not guessing anymore. Okay. So does that make sense?
Yeah. It's interesting because and again, you and I don't have any business relationships. So I'm not trying to like inflate your ego or anything like that. But I come from outside the healthcare industry. I started tech businesses and venture capital firms and stuff like that. The concept of playbooks and processes and standardization is normal. It would be insane to run those businesses off of the back of a spreadsheet, or I'm sorry, a notebook and a pen and paper and stuff like that. But yet, like in this particular industry, um, it, it's not there yet, and it's cool to see you guys, how you talk about this. It seems so obvious to me, but yet the more and more I talk to practice owners, it's like, how do you do that? And they're like, well, I kind of have a feel for it, or kind of, I'm an investor in a number of other tech businesses. And I was just talking to one of our founders the other day, and I said, like, there's a lingo to it, right? So I was like, oh, what's your cost of acquisition for a new customer last quarter? And she knew. And I said, okay, hey, what's your lifetime value for that customer? And she knew, you know, but then if I go to a practice owner and I say, okay, so that patient, where did they come from? Or what was the average visit value? Or what do you expect the lifetime value of that client or that patient to be? It's almost as if I just asked the most offensive question in the world. Partially, it's because when you start from this perspective of I'm here for better healthcare outcomes, it's almost like taboo to talk about money. But yet, to your point, your dad was able to take vacations. Like, unfortunately, you got to have sort of that mindset because that vacation doesn't pay for itself, So you said you guys had tried a couple versions of this, didn't work out. You kind of alluded to, having lost some money and stuff like that. And I know there are probably a lot of learnings in those mistakes that there's probably not enough hours in the week to talk about all the things you guys learned. But just shooting from the hip here, if I were to just ask you, like, those other times you guys failed with this model, what are like the one or two biggest learnings or biggest mistakes you guys made? What do you wish you could go back in a time machine and tell yourself, if you only could tell yourself one or two things to avoid?
We tried doing too much. We got away from our beachhead.
Can you elaborate on that? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. So our practice right now, we we are the preferred destination for all musculoskeletal conditions of people who are looking to avoid surgery. That's our one sentence, like that's our identity. We were doing pain management, we were doing med management, we had physical therapy, we did PRP, there wasn't like this consistency of this is what we do. And therefore, like, there was confusion amongst the ranks. We didn't have systems. We just didn't identify like what our strength was, what was gonna feed us, what the community needed, and we didn't market the hell out of it.
Yeah. Let me make a statement or an assertion, and you tell me if I'm wrong about it. Because when I check out your website, right, when I was kind of like looking you guys up, you said something there really casually that I think is the differentiator. For example, you said we're the go-to place for people that want to avoid surgery. That's a very emotional statement, and like it probably sounds to anybody with a higher, healthcare degree, they're like, oh, that's just whatever, But I think coming from my background and the things I invest in and stuff like that, the fact is that the skills of physical therapy are a commodity. I'm going to lose a lot of people when I say that, but it's unfortunately true. It's like that is not the differentiator, and more importantly, like and I'm 43 now. I got a ton of kids, and I don't know how to differentiate between practice A versus practice B. I don't care what they say to me, but if one of them says avoid surgery and the other one says pain management, neither is wrong. The question is which one connects with me more? Like if I'm in pain, I would think that one, pain management, is the one I want to go for. And if I just don't want to go under a scalpel, that's the one I want to go for. Anyway, I'm probably not articulating this well, but I think that one of the things that I've said pretty often that I think is my assertion, I'm curious what you think. I think that the difference between good practices and great practices is that great practices understand their ideal customer and know how to speak to them. When you talk about like getting away from your beachhead, it seems like your beachhead was avoid surgery. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, our beachhead is we want to be a destination for people who are looking for surgical alternatives. Because what happens, here's like the standard algorithm of you got physical therapy, you have imaging centers, you have specialists. These are all like very compartmentalized, freaking disciplines that patients are, anybody who's had shoulder pain has gone to their primary care. Their primary care says go to PT. PT treats with no imaging and spins their wheels, runs in the sand for 2 or 3 weeks and says, okay, you might need an MRI or something. Go back to where you came from. So primary care, they go to ortho, orders an MRI. Keep in mind, there's copays, time away, all these things through all these. So they go to an imaging center, pay another copay or pay cash to get an MRI. Go to find out, back to the ortho. Oh, hey, this is a partial thickness tear that doesn't need surgery. Here's a steroid injection. Go back to PT. Patient, we're speaking to that patient. We like to do is you want to enter the conversation that's going on in the patient's head. And how do you do that in a way that's you're not condescending, you're not talking down. You need to be speaking that language. And so you guys are both non-medical background. That's what we try to do best. And it's an art and it's a skill and it takes time to learn. But when you start to be consistent with that message, great things happen.
I couldn't agree more. And I know like, and again, I say this assertively, but I'm always open to like other opinions. I just think that the more practices would behave as marketing companies that happen to deliver healthcare, the more successful they would be, because at the end of the day, your customer is a consumer, and like um I'm a super nerd, and one of the things I like to do is just try to like understand why cults are the way they are. So for example, like you know my oldest is 10 years old and my youngest is 20 months old, right? So my 10-year-old is getting to that point now where there's certain brands that are cool and certain brands that are not cool, and as much as I could probably make fun of that now, I remember having to go through that when I was her age. And the thing is, I just find it interesting that like how marketing is actually more important than the product, because ultimately a t-shirt's a t-shirt, right? There's not a lot of innovation in a t-shirt. It's got a hole for your head, a hole for your arms. I guess where I'm going with this is that there's this phrase that somebody said to me a long time ago, that the more you understand your customers' hopes, fears, and dreams better than they could even articulate, the better positioned you are to do whatever it is you need to do. And that's not about taking advantage of them. It's about giving them what they want. Another brand I don't have a business example of or a business relationship with, but I find myself thinking a lot about over these last couple of days. There's a fitness brand called BPN, Bear Performance Nutrition or something like that. He's based down in Austin, Texas. They're pretty big now, but the interesting part is that like, and I'm a marathon runner, so I think about like energy gels and all that stuff. Energy gels themselves are all a commodity. I mean, you're right. But what's fascinating is like his particular company sticks out to me because they've chosen to trademark a particular phrase that is "go one more." And they leave it just like that. That's the trademarked phrase: "Go one more mile, go one more lift, go one more whatever." And I just find it fascinating because, like, let's just say you went to like school for nutrition and now you know how to make the best gel or whatever. They find themselves like starting this whole business and then wondering why it didn't take off. And what they forget to understand is that at the end of the day, if they didn't connect with me, like the world is noisy, the world's busy, and it's like, I just find it really fascinating that like these guys are picking that phrase and going after it, and they don't care. They're happy to like reject anybody else that doesn't want to go one more. And I think I would just go trademark a bunch of these phrases that you guys use and then own them. Like just own the entire phrase around it, block out anybody outside of it, and and just I would try it. I think the more practices would embrace the idea that they're marketing firms that happen to deliver healthcare, the more successful I think they'd be, the more they'd be able to take vacations, recruit the right people, and you guys have, I mean, it seems like you guys have done that. You guys, I think you said something in passing, like you guys scaled pretty quick, 4 or 6 locations in a few months or something like that. Is the goal to have more locations, or are you guys kind of settled? And I think you said you're at 6 locations now.
Yeah, the goal is this. Some of this I've probably talked to you more offline about, because we do have some other. We're looking to do more. Okay, I'll just say that we're highly active in that process right now. I do want to say that one of our partners, he's somebody who he's done 9-figure deals and has that in his background, and so he takes lead on a lot of the acquisition process. Myself and Ryan Martin we make sure the education process is consistent across. So when people come in, here's the playbook, here's the drill, everything from the medical to the PT side, and we make that scalable. My ultimate vision, Paul, is I want to create a firm that teaches physical therapists how to integrate with this model. However far this goes with our locations, like I said, we're active in growing that. We do see some light coming at the end as far as a possible exit here in the next 12 to 18 months. But the journey won't stop at that. It's going to be, we're looking to do something a little bit bigger. But I hope to use this experience and create a consulting firm, that helps therapists, you know, and we're looking for a certain type, of course, but how to integrate. And it's a no brainer. Like you said earlier, like, why aren't more people doing it? Well, there's a couple of reasons. And I have a process that can help make that a lot easier to digest.
You said something earlier that I think is very true. You said that a lot of people don't want to fail, whether they're practice owners or new clinicians that just came out of school. Failure is a hard thing. And I think it's part of the training too, right? Like I went to school for engineering, and in engineering, failure isn't accepted, but it's understood that it's part of the process. Because in other words, if we knew how to make the right microchip, if we knew how to do these things from the beginning, it'd be fine. Healthcare, I think, is one of those, just, and this is a broad statement, healthcare by design is a zero fail kind of training. You do not want failure there, right? So I understand that. I wouldn't want my triage doctor to be comfortable with failure if I'm in there.
Exactly.
But on the flip side of that statement, there's not a whole lot of entrepreneurial thinking or training around the entrepreneurial side of practice ownership or of career development. And unfortunately, on that side of people's careers and businesses, failure is really the only way. You've got to be able to accept that and sort of understand that's part of the process. I guess where I'm going with this is that there is no modern day business school for healthcare providers. And I don't mean like an MBA. You can certainly, I'm sure Wharton and all these schools will gladly take $200K of your money to teach you how to read a case study. But there's no modern day incubator or accelerator that says, hey, new clinician, here are the soft skills you need to learn if you want to take your career from here to there. Or hey, practice owner, here's how you do email marketing, or here's how you should be thinking about your books. Nobody really thinks about that. So let's just say there's a practice owner listening to this right now, and they're looking at your all's website and they're like, oh man, these guys are getting big, and I'll message Colin online or whatever. What's your maybe number 1 or number 2 piece of advice for an existing owner that wants to grow aggressively? Because you guys are growing aggressively, and but what do you say to somebody? I call you and I say, hey man, Colin, I'm based in Virginia. I'm seeing 70. I got 70 visits a week or whatever, and here's my practice. But man, I got to get out of the day to day or whatever. What's your first call with me? What do you tell me?
I want to know what their goal is. What are you trying to do? If you're just looking to stay in therapy and not diversify and not learn how to sell something that's not insurance based, I'm probably not the guy for you. But if you're looking to diversify your practice, you're looking to integrate, you're looking to add dimensions, now we can have a conversation. It starts with that, Paul. let's say somebody does want to learn how to diversify, you start to ask what's your commitment level to continuing education. A lot of people say they want to do stuff, but the commit is, you have to vet that out, right? And that takes a series of conversations. Our training company is separate from Modern. The reason why is if we ever do something down the road, this light at the end of the tunnel exit, I want to keep all that separate. And each has a value to it. Okay. And so our advanced musculoskeletal ultrasound center is the education arm for what we do. We sell separate online packages. We do mentorship. We actually have a residency program. And so somebody says, I want to invest heavy on the ultrasound piece. I see it as the dimension. It's the trust accelerator. If somebody's willing to put 6 to 12 months of training into that, then that's essentially the ante to get into the multidiscipline game. And you can DIY this. Like there's nothing that we do that you can't learn on your own, but it's a lot harder. Just like with anything, right? You want to go, whatever your skill set is, you're going to go you're going to want to hang around people who are doing that thing, right? And so it's just that's what mentorship is. And so we provide that with AMSKU on that side of things. So somebody wants to diversify. I really want to know, number one, where they are, where they want to go, what they're willing to invest in order to get there before I even want to have a real conversation about it.
Right. I know we're running a little bit short on time, but just looping back to one of the comments you made earlier. So when you've been talking about diversified revenue streams, you sort of, you talked about insurance reimbursement, cash pay, DME, a couple different lines. And I'm not fishing for anything private from your firm, but just when you think about a healthy practice, again, pick my mythical practice over here. Let's just say I am diversified and all that stuff. In broad strokes, what should the percentage of revenue be for each of those buckets to be healthy? Like obviously 100% cash pay is probably not great. 100% reimbursement or insurance pay is not great. But as just high level, how do you think about that? What is a truly diversified practice? Roughly what percentages of revenue should be in each of those buckets, do you think?
In a practice like ours, PT pays the bills, medical makes the margin.
Damn, that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's it.
That's our secret. That's our sauce.
The thing I love about this, and this is not going to sound like a compliment, but I'm genuinely, I mean it this way. What's fascinating is that like what you're talking about here is like probably insane to a lot of other practice owners, but it is absolutely the norm in every other business that we spend money in. So for example, let's just use a cliche example. Milk and bread at a grocery store is the staple. Basically the way that when you look at any grocery store, anything on the outer edges is just what it takes to get you in the door. To your point, PT pays the bills. The staples pay the bills. It's whatever's on the outer walls of a grocery store. Everything on the inner aisles is the margin right there. Like that's and to your point, it's like the medical. It's the same when you like go to websites, for example, Chubby's shorts, like swim trunks. It's like they're just trying to get you to open the wallet one time. That first purchase is not going to be the margin driver for them. They're probably upside down on selling you that first pair of shorts at 40% discount or whatever. But they know that once you open the wallet one time, every add-on, every upsell, every subsequent purchase is now all margin. My point is that like, I love how you just said that so straightforward, and I just wish more practices would think that way. Super cool. Super cool. I'm sorry. I think I cut you off too, by the way. Was there something more you were going to say about that?
No, I mean, there's more detail to elaborate, but that's it, man. I mean, it's the therapy. We know our numbers. Therapy pays the bills. Actually, we make money on therapy. Our taxonomy with the cash pay and the medical interventions, that's our margin. I don't even know what a typical therapy margin is now. Is it 5%, 10%?
Oh, I don't think anybody really shares it. I mean, I think it's one of those things where that particular topic is discussed after a couple beers or glasses of wine at a dinner, but nobody wants to talk about it on a big mailing list. But I would say from like where I sit, our clients are across 40 some states right now. And I would say like mediocre practices are probably at like an 8 to 10% net margin, and reasonably well ones are probably closer to 20 25%. But the difference between that lower margin and the higher margin, I would say, is, to your point, it's about the diversification. I think owning and running a physical therapy practice is actually quite profitable. And if it wasn't quite profitable, you wouldn't have private equity firms coming into this space, rolling them up, just like you sort of alluded to. You guys might have an exit soon too, right? Like, the thing that a lot of practice owners don't realize is that, like, if this truly was a horrible business to be in, nobody would be in it. And on top of that, private equity would not be here trying to roll it up. And yet that's not the case. So most practices, I think, are profitable by default and then fall into low margins and or unprofitability through 1,000 little cuts. It's like your cancel rate goes high, or somebody doesn't complete a plan of care, or all these little cuts. It's like death by 1,000 cuts that really gets you from that really healthy profit margin to wondering how you're going to make payroll next week.
Not knowing your numbers, I think, is that's your death by paper cuts. Is you make a couple bad hires, you stop tracking, you stop tracking your referrals, you don't know what your average case is, like what is your average case, right? And so all those things matter. And I think that even if you just stop tracking one or multiple of that, then that's a formula for you're
going to get in trouble real fast. Yeah. Because you know this better than anybody else, but this particular industry, it's even more dangerous, especially on the insurance side. It's even more dangerous because the length of time that can elapse, even if you're just doing Medicare and going to get paid in 10 or 15 days, that 10 or 15 days can crush you if you're not careful.
One of our mentors says, he has a phrase that's like, not diversifying outside of insurance is like, it's like a form of sharecropping. Everybody's making money off your license. You're getting paid last. And again, I'm not sitting here like I got it all figured out. We just went through some trials and we're willing to fail. And we all couldn't have done it alone. Like I said, we have a partnership with a handful of us who have put in the efforts. But ultimately what we had to do was systematize our diversification efforts, condense our beachhead, simplify our message, know our numbers, have our processes, and understand that these cash services, you have to systematize the heck out of that and understand that, the hard skills is like commoditized medicine. You mentioned, you used that word, and I agree with it. You don't want to be associated with that. You want your providers to have a good set of hard skills. Everybody's coming out well trained. That's not an issue. Is the philosophy aligned? Are you willing to grow? Do you have a growth mindset? Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to understand that you're not delivering care? You're delivering outcomes, and you're putting that outcome at the forefront of this patient's encounter with you, and you're enhancing their experience by helping them get to the place they want to go, the reason why they're coming to you, all the things they want to get back to. So here in the Valley, it's really easy for us, to be honest with you, man, because we got so many snowbirds. Nobody wants a knee surgery. Nobody wants a total knee. They want to play pickleball next weekend. For us, it's a fight to pull the reins back on most of these people because we want to sell them the outcome. We want to deliver the best outcome. And sometimes that requires, you're getting this PRP procedure. You're going to have to take a couple weeks off. Are you willing to work with me on that? That's the training. That's the majority of our training. All the hard skills of decision tree algorithms, imaging, diagnosis, intervention, that is the easiest thing to teach providers. The hardest thing to teach is the philosophy, the conversations, what the mission is. We're not here just to, be a robot and tell people what they need. You're here to address the reason why they're here through giving them an experience.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Strata Stories. Strata PT is a single EMR platform and revenue cycle management service for physical, occupational, and speech therapy practices that helps you achieve a 99.99% reimbursement rate. If you'd like to learn more about Strata PT and see how our EMR and RCM works, head over to stratapt.com to book a demo.